We've started 5 gardens over the past 5 years, and while not all of them ended up magazine worthy, I've learned a lot about planning, prepping, and planting in ways that lead to a successful growing season. So in this video, I'm going to highlight some of the best pieces of advice that I can give surrounding starting a new garden. Whether you're planning on starting a new garden this spring, or if you're going to be expanding your existing one, there are going to be some things in this video that I showcase that you will definitely want to try. Welcome back to the channel, by the way. If you're new here, I'm Taylor, and I help gardeners explore sustainable and regenerative systems that boost yields in the garden without the waste of a lot of modern gardening practices. And I'll start off by just saying that I am no gardening master. I don't claim any special training or skills beyond being willing to try things and experiment and showcase it. I try my best to do my research before I present anything to you, but I'm still super fallible and make mistakes, so I appreciate you bearing with me. Speaking of mistakes, I have made many in my gardening endeavors, but before we hop into a tour of the gardens that Cassidy and I have started, I'll say that part of the reason that I wanted to make this video is to kind of wrap up the home gardening season of our experience as we grow. Not because we're done gardening, because we're going to be doing so on a much larger scale, and we're going to be selling the flowers that we grow and starting to learn this world of micro farming. And so in case you're worried, all of the stuff that we've taught and shown and talked about on this channel will still be relevant to home growers. We're still going to be doing all of that stuff. We'll just be doing it on a much larger scale. Interestingly, the place that we're going to be farming going forward also happens to be the same place that we started our first ever home garden, right here just outside of Spokane, Washington. We had 3 years with this garden, and each year we expanded it until we were covering most of the whole property. We grew the classic veggies, cabbage, onions, potatoes, tomatoes, green beans, herbs, and a whole lot more. We also grew flowers in the front yard. And those first years getting into gardening are ones that I wish I could go back to, just discovering all of the growing techniques that we would implement in trial. I'll touch onto this later, but when I think about the lessons that I learned from this garden, a lot of it was just learning the benefit of trying things. It really seems like people kind of overall right now are kind of apathetic and just don't want to put in any more effort than they absolutely have to. But so much of the fun of gardening is the exploration and experimentation process. And that is what this first garden really sparked in me. The second garden that we started was when we moved to a house with a very small plot to grow on. We were renting, and we had a little strip that we could grow flowers in. And even though this was a teeny space compared to what we were coming off of, it was a vital lifeline to gardening. Super good for our mental health, easy to manage, 100 square feet, there you go. While we were living at that house, though, we also helped Cassidy's parents start their garden at their house that they had recently moved into. And the way that we did this was by designing the garden with them and by starting all of those plants from seed. This was definitely more of a hands-off for us than the other gardens that we started, but we still count it as one of ours because starting plants is such a vital part of the growing process. Cassidy had started hundreds of perennials, most of which actually made it into the ground and are alive and thriving years later. And the garden is beautiful. It's attractive to everyone who walks by. The fourth garden that we started was also during this time at a house that we didn't own, my parents' yard. This one we had way more involvement in, mostly because we were closer to it proximity-wise. We really did a majority of the work to install this garden, I'd say. Started all the seeds with a few exceptions with the bare roots that we bought. We also co-designed the garden with my parents, prepared and amended the soil, installed the garden beds, and planted the perennials. And this was probably our most immediately successful garden that we've ever started. It thrived in year 1 and exploded in year 2, which was just this past year. Such a beautiful space. We made a whole video showcasing and touring the garden that you can check out to see how we did it. Fond memories of planting there, and less fond memories of removing the rock mulch. Really not a fan of rock mulch. And that brings us to our fifth garden, and the last one that we started, and I would say that in some ways, this was the least overtly successful garden that we started. From a soil building perspective, it was probably the strongest and fastest. We saw the soil transform year over year through using indigenous microorganisms or IMO4 and liquid IMO. We really had our seed starting down, and our potting mix recipe was honed in pretty perfect. The main problem there was the pests, but we still learned a ton from that garden and are super grateful for what we grew there. So with that overview out of the way, I'm going to walk through what I consider to be the main factors that go into starting and maintaining a successful, thriving garden. The first factor, which is quite obvious, but is still very easy to overlook, speaking from personal experience, is the planning. And when I say planning, I mean multiple things at multiple levels. We've got a garden planning roadmap that you can check out. This is something that we use to start our gardens, and we give it to others to use. It's a very simple step-by-step planning guide that's actually perfect for this time of year as you're stepping into the new year and are starting to plan out maybe your next growing season. But what I'm talking about here falls into the vision mapping realm. What are my dreams for my garden? What aesthetic am I looking for? What kind of yield do I want to get? All of those big picture questions. And not every garden has been the same for us. In our smallest garden, we weren't wanting a garden that would supply all of our food needs, for instance. Our goal for that garden was just to grow a bouquet of flowers for each week of the summer and a few herbs and tomatoes here and there. Very different from our first garden. The second kind of mapping is the literal physical space mapping. What does my property contain? Where is the viable growing space? Are there things that I can observe about the space before even starting? And these are crucial questions that are often overlooked to our detriment. If you haphazardly start growing plants in partial shade where they need full sun, it means that you didn't map your yard properly. You also want to take inventory of your personal resources. What kind of budget are you working with? What kind of hours can you spend actually on your garden in the growing season? And then decide on some tangible goals and write them down. These are things that we've done in one way or another, some well, some poorly, with all of our gardens. With our first ever garden, we literally drew a 2-scale map on taped together graph paper and hung it on our wall so that we could see what we were working with. This was a great experience to become better acquainted with our yard and the viable growing space that it presented. Once you've done the planning and you're ready to start installing your garden beds, you want to do some basic assessments of your soil. Test for compaction, look in the soil to see if there are any signs of microbial life, any white hyphae in the soil indicating healthy fungal or actinomycete presence. Are there earthworms or arthropods? These are all signs that there's some degree of good biological activity in your soil. And if you don't see any of these things, you might have some work to do to prepare the soil. And that could mean that making some high quality compost and layering it on top of the soil to feed the biology. You could whip up a few batches of Jadam microbial solution if you're just getting started in the realm of natural farming. Could mean that you make a slurry out of your worm castings and you spread those out across your soil and mulch over the top. Many paths that you can take, many of which we cover on this channel and other videos. If you've got substantial compaction in your soil, are you going to rototill or break up that initial layer of compaction, or are you just going to layer compost half a foot deep and gradually broad fork the soil to loosen it up over time? These are a few of the further observations and action steps that you need to take. We missed this in the last garden that we started. We were in a very hectic season of life and we just wanted to get some plants in the ground, but this kind of gave us the chance to learn a valuable lesson. Check for compaction, observe your space. What is your general soil composition? We didn't know any of this stuff as we started diving into that garden. We just wanted to get plants in the ground and we chose spots where the sun hit the most often. Mistakes all around. Something else in this arena that I'd say is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned when it comes to starting new garden projects is to just not bite off more than you can chew. If you can afford compost to cover 20 square feet and start new garden beds, that's much better than spreading it super thin, trying to squeak out 100 square foot growing space, expecting to be able to plant into it right away. There was one time that we actually had to take a break from even trying to grow food crops mid-growing season because the soil just wasn't ready. So we took out our crops so that we could sow a cover crop seed mix and build the soil up a bit. Take your time and only tackle what you can handle, and you'll be able to expand the following growing season. And tools like Jadam microbial solution and IMO 4 and 5 really make this process of soil building go faster, but they still take time to fully take effect. And as hard as it is, it's better to patiently build than to rush ahead and have nothing work. Once we've done the work of planning and preparing the garden for planting, it's time to actually grow the plants. And we've talked about the importance of starting your own seeds before on this channel, but it bears repeating. Now, if you don't have the equipment or the resources to start seeds, and you only want maybe a couple of tomatoes and a few kales, then by all means, buy them pre-started from wherever you want, preferably a local nursery, or if you've got one, a master gardener plant sale in your area. Buying locally started annuals really helps guarantee that those plants will actually do well in your area. Same with perennials. Last season, we sold annuals to a bunch of our neighbors, and we were able to more or less recoup the cost of the seeds that we actually bought that year. And we feel really good about that because those plants that our neighbors bought from us were healthy, acclimatized to the area, and basically guaranteed to thrive so long as they planted and watered them. Now, I always say that seed starting is such a valuable skill to have and well worth the investment in the equipment. You really just need a few plug trays, or better yet, a soil blocker and some trays that they can grow on. I'll link to the stuff that we use in the description. But once you have this stuff, and especially if you make your own potting mix, this is one of the main areas that you're gonna save money in the long run. Buying a single plant from the nursery for the price of a pack of seeds that you could start like 20 from is ridiculous. What's even more ridiculous is the money that you save when you learn the skill of starting perennials from seed. And I'll just say that Cassidy is the seed starting master in our family. I started a few hundred plants last year. She started literally thousands. It's really no comparison. But once you have that skill and some general insight into starting perennials from seed, the world sort of opens up to you, because perennials are spendy to buy. But again, seed packets are relatively cheap, and you can fill out your perennial garden much faster and more affordably if you're willing to learn how to start perennials from seed. There are a lot of things that go into seed starting. We'll make sure to show you how we're doing this coming growing season. But two things that I want to highlight that you may or may not have heard about already are winter sowing and this seed soak solution. We use this seed soak solution for all of our seeds and bare roots and bulbs. It's made from Korean natural farming inputs. And the purpose in seed soaking is to break up the seed coating slightly, stimulate the seed's metabolism, inoculate it with beneficial microbes, and give it an initial boost of immunity from disease. This stuff works wonders, and it skyrocketed our germination rates. The recipe uses fermented plant juice, vinegar, oriental herbal nutrient, and lactic acid bacteria. You can check out our video on how we use it exactly, but you're basically diluting these ingredients very heavily and soaking your seeds for varying amounts of time based on the size of the seed. Smaller ones spend less time soaking, and larger ones more time. And the other huge takeaway that we've had from starting all of these gardens is the benefit of winter sowing. And this is not for everyone for sure. If you're in too warm of a climate, you actually can't do it at all. I think it caps out at like 7B or something. But this is basically where we start seeds in mini greenhouses made out of totes or milk jugs, and then we keep them outside during the cold winter months. And this whole process really helps with a couple things. First, it helps break up seed starting so that you don't have to do quite so much of it all at one time in the month leading up to the planting. And you get to do a lot of it in advance. And the second thing, it makes really healthy plant starts because they're so acclimatized and hardy. They usually start off a little bit slower in the beginning when you plant them. They're super healthy throughout the season, and they keep producing a little bit later on than maybe other seeds that you've started. Again, you can check out our video from last year on how to do that. We'll probably come out with another one this year as we get closer, that just showcasing how we're doing this on a much larger scale. Both of these seed starting methods are things that we have trialed in various gardens that we've started, and we will definitely keep doing. Now, once we've got plants in the ground, we've really got only a few things that we need to watch for: watering, disease, and pests. And while this list is short, if any of these can get out of hand, it can mess up that work that you put in. Now, if you put in the work to build healthy soil, in my experience, the watering issues largely go away. For us in our hot, dry summers, the main thing that we're worried about is our plants dehydrating, but with good organic matter in the soil and a nice thick mulch, water mostly sticks around. When it comes to disease, the only places that we've had experience here is in the two gardens that we weren't actively tending to in the growing season, each of our parents' gardens. And I legitimately think that the reason that we've never experienced disease in any of our personal gardens is because of the stuff that we spray on our plants. Could be wrong, but I don't think that either of our sets of parents religiously brew and apply lactic acid bacteria, Jadam microbial solution, or liquid IMO. And we apply all of these both foliarly to our plants throughout the growing season and to our soil leading up to and during the growing season. And with all of the beneficial microorganisms crowding out the environment, I think disease just never really gets the chance to take hold on our plants. On the flip side, one of our gardens, our last one, suffered from intense pest pressure early on in the growing season. I won't go into it too much in this video because we've discussed it at length elsewhere, and I don't want to relive the horrible memories. But essentially, we had some of the most insane and terrible plague-like crop destruction we've ever seen. And I think that the root cause was that we were planting into an area that had very well-established landscaping, these huge lilac hedges that were harboring pests. Plus, we inoculated our garden beds with caterpillar larvae accidentally by spreading oak leaves across them. We were able to recover well into the growing season after suffering huge losses, but that is one reason that I'm happy to be rid of that garden and back to the OG. I think that that space was doomed to a long road of reestablishing a balanced microecosystem with all the necessary predators and whatnot. So the main things that we've learned from starting these gardens, if I had to boil it down, I'd say the most important thing is to take your time and plan well. Whenever we've rushed stuff, seed starting, planting, soil prep, it never really goes well, and we usually have to backtrack and start over. Another thing, and this will come as a surprise to no one who's a frequent visitor of this channel, but I really feel comfortable swearing by my homemade gardening inputs. This is what so much of this channel is devoted to, highlighting these low-cost, hyper-effective brews and how and when to use them. But it's because they work, at least from our perspective. And we'll be continuing to use them as we grow on a much larger scale here, as well as when we start our microfarm this season, because they've proven to us their worth. And I think that there's actually even much more to be learned from them and the potential that they have for cultivating a healthy growing environment. So there you have it, 5 gardens in 5 years. This was a sort of scattered presentation, but I thought it would be fun as we're coming to the end of the year and doing more reflection and get to share some of those takeaways with you guys. Let me know in the comments what you swear by each year and what you look forward to trying in the future. And if you want to keep up with me and get weekly gardening insights straight into your inbox each week, you can sign up for my email newsletter linked in the description, or scan the code on the screen, whichever side it comes on. If you enjoyed this video, you will want to check out our video showcasing this perennial garden that we started over a several years span. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.